This is Mike and C, and this is another episode of You Can't Handle the Truth. We got a few topics today, don't we? Something interesting, right?
Yes. Well, insurance. It's always interesting, right?
How interesting is insurance?
It's so interesting. It's actually something that we don't stop thinking about that lives rent-free in our head.
Unfortunately.
And we want it to live rent-free in yours too.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, yes, it's not sexy, but we got to talk about it. So, Mike, I am a Florida driver. What is
So am I.
What? I'm a Florida driver. What insurance do I need to carry?
Like the name, the brand name, or are you just talking about what type of insurance? Here's what she should have. I'm just giving her a hard time. There's the minimum, okay? And when people come into our office a lot, and you can hear it on our prior episodes, they'll talk about, I have full coverage, and you usually don't, especially when you say that. The minimum coverage that's required under the law is personal injury protection insurance that covers you for your medical bills, regardless of whether you're at fault. It also covers you for a portion of your lost wages, regardless of whether you're at fault in the accident. That's required. The other one is property damage liability. It's when you have an accident and you damage another vehicle. So it's for your liability, not for, anything you're going to get in terms of benefits. That's the minimum. After that, your question was, well, what should you purchase? Well, you should have really all coverages that are available. Another type of coverage is collision coverage, where it covers your vehicle, regardless of whether you're at fault. It covers the damage to your vehicle. Why should you get that? Because people drive around uninsured. There's also comprehensive coverage, which covers you for things like driving down the street and a rock hits your windshield, or your sunroof and causes damage. It's for things that are outside of the norm, right?
I say in nature.
In nature, right. And that covers you regardless of whether you're at fault. Those are coverages you should have. Usually they come with a deductible of $500 or $1,000. Another important insurance, you know where I'm going with this, is called uninsured motorist coverage. I have friends that are very smart people that will tell me, well, why would I ever purchase uninsured motorist coverage? That's for lawyers. That's for this and that. And it's not for lawyers. I don't, care necessarily whether people have uninsured motorist coverage when I'm out in the real world. When I'm a lawyer, if you don't have that coverage, it prevents you from collecting damages in a personal injury case. And it's for when, exactly what it says, when a driver that's at fault, either one, doesn't carry any bodily injury coverage, which again, if you remember from the outset, that's not required, or two, has bodily injury coverage that is insufficient to cover your damages. What are your damages in cases like this? Your past medical bills is number one. Number two is the future medical bills you're reasonably certain to incur. That's number two. That's decided a lot of times by a medical practitioner. Number three is if you sustain a permanent injury, you can recover pain and suffering damages in the past and the future, and there's no standard for that. A jury decides what that is. You can also recover your past and future lost wages. So those are elements of damages that are covered under the uninsured motorist coverage. And note, a lot of those elements are not covered by your regular health insurance, because you have the smart aleck will tell me, well, just get health insurance, you'll be fine. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Health insurance, I don't believe, covers lost wages. I don't think health insurance covers damages for pain and suffering. I don't think it covers future medical bills either. So that's why uninsured motorist coverage is very important. And I know you can talk about this. The insurance company is required to offer uninsured motorists, right?
No.
Does not?
No, not in the state of Florida. Maybe in some states, but not in the state of Florida. So in Florida, this is the only state in the U.S. that is not a mandatory bodily injury state, meaning that you're not mandated to have to cover that. The legislature doesn't require it by law. Insurance companies try not to sell it to you.
But they have to at least put it out there for you to reject.
No, not bodily injury.
John, I'm talking about uninsured motorists.
Uninsured motorists.
Right.
But the idea is you have to carry bodily injury coverage to carry uninsured motorist.
That's a great point.
So,
right.
you can only carry as much uninsured motorist coverage as you carry bodily injury coverage. So although bodily injury coverage isn't for you, it's for someone you might injure. In order to carry uninsured motorist coverage, which is for you, which you should carry, you have to carry bodily injury coverage. Now, you can reject uninsured motorist coverage, and I think this is where people fall victim to. Is ultimately they think they're carrying full coverage. They have no idea.
Coverage.
That term full coverage that the insurance company likes to use as a predatory term to make you think that you're fully covered with everything, when really it covers nothing for you.
Right.
So ultimately, what you want to make sure that you have and you're carrying bodily injury coverage, uninsured motorist coverage, and I like to divvy it up between what's, things to protect your assets and things to protect your body. And you should carry bodily injury coverage, property damage, which is required to protect your assets. And you should carry uninsured motorist coverage and collision coverage to protect your body and your vehicle.
Right.
So that's, if you want to think about it, it's protecting you just all together. And it, it's like, because people are like, why do I carry bodily injury coverage? It doesn't protect me if it already protects somebody I injure. When if I just don't cover it, they won't sue me. Well, they could sue you personally. They just won't be able to go after any insurance because you don't carry it. So
Right.
I think that's kind of, that needs to be distinguished and people need to understand. But if you listen to some of our other episodes, we talked about the tort reform bill that's going through and how detrimental it is and awful it is for Floridians. But ultimately, there are some good bills that are up to be potentially passed by our Congress and signed by our governor. And one is to require mandatory BI. They want to require $25,000 mandatory BI coverage.
Bodily injury.
And I think, bodily injury coverage. And I think that there's also even a provision about uninsured motorists. I haven't, she's broken that one down because it's not, it's important, but it's not detrimental to your rights or anything like that. It would just keep the status quo if it didn't pass.
Right.
But ultimately, I think there's some provision about how they have to offer uninsured motorists to you. So it's not, it's not this issue where people are rejecting it without even knowing what they're rejecting.
Yeah, so the bodily injury liability is akin to the property damage liability we talked about that was mandatory. Property damage liability right now is mandatory, and it's for causing damage to the car. What's not mandatory and what they're proposing be mandatory is this bodily injury coverage. So it's liability. Again, liability coverage is for you being at fault and covering damage, whether it's to the person themselves, bodily injury, or whether it's property damage. So if they had a mandatory bodily injury law, which they do in many states, you would have, a person, for instance, I think is it 25,000 that we're talking about as mandatory?
This is what they're proposing.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, as it stands right now, if you get into an accident and someone has that's at fault in the accident has the full coverage, right, the minimum, and they don't have bodily injury coverage because remember that's not required, and you get injured and you don't have uninsured motorist coverage, then you're out of luck in terms of insurance.
And we see it all the time. I think about over 30% of drivers on the road are not carrying any type of coverage for injuries to your body or injuries to someone else's body.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about here. That's what we want to express to you. It's really to know this now before you've been involved in an accident is better than after you've been involved in an accident, because the hardest thing to do, I think, as a plaintiff's attorney is to tell people, hey, listen, there's no insurance here. Like, we can't help you.
Right.
Kind of your SOL.
Right. And it's, you can pursue a case against someone without insurance, and, in Florida, it's going to be a tough sell. So, the bodily injury requirement might actually help, in the expedition of, is that a word? The expedited process of a claim, believe it or not, because, nowadays getting to 25,000 medical bills is not difficult. I mean, if you go to the hospital, your bills are getting close to that range anyway.
Yep.
Right. I mean, even if you don't stay the night, even if you're discharged the same day, your bills are getting close to that already. Yep. So interesting, very interesting.
It is. And it's beneficial. And again, it's problematic that Florida's the only state that doesn't have any mandatory bodily injury. I mean, I think it's, I think it's obvious that we need it. So hopefully this bill or some form of this bill will pass in order to get mandatory bodily injury coverage for every Floridian driver who carries insurance.
Who carries insurance,
yeah,
right?
Which is still the caveat.
Right, right. So. I think we had on the slate today talking about some things that drivers may want to do in the event that there's an accident, in terms of, even if they're not injured in an accident, are there things that they should be doing given the status of the laws in Florida as we speak? I mean, what would you tell a client who came in and said, hey, I got into this accident and, what should I do?
Okay.
Do I need to do anything?
So I think what's really important is to know what you need to do immediately after you're involved in an accident at the scene of the accident. First thing to do, make sure you and everyone's okay. call 911 so you can get a police report, because sometimes in some situations, there's no police report, then it just makes things more difficult. The insurance company will definitely make things more difficult for you, or at least the other parties who you're claiming is at fault is. And just because people, like, if someone, someone causes an accident, just because they say they're at fault there to you at the scene doesn't mean that that's what they're going to tell their insurance company.
Right.
And that's where all the problems happen, and the problems occur, on the back end. So call 911, take photos if you can.
Take photos of both vehicles. Right.
Take photos of where you are, both vehicles, if you can, possibly before the vehicles are moved. And then the next thing you want to do is seek medical treatment immediately after, if that's necessary for you.
It's necessary.
And sometimes we see, a lot of times, I think, Mike, you can speak to this too, where people's adrenaline is so high that they don't feel any soreness or issues or pain while they're there, or even just immediately after. But after a couple of days, they'll have a massive onset of pain.
Right.
Yeah. So, if that's the case, you don't go immediately after, then go as soon as you possibly can. And it doesn't have to be to the ER. Right. You don't have any broken bones, nothing sticking out of places. If you don't hit your head, I think that it's, you could possibly follow up at urgent care. You don't have as long as a wait or long of lines or big of a bill to have to deal with.
Just seek treatment. And I think, given the introduction to insurance in Florida that we gave at the beginning, call your insurance company, make a claim. A lot of people will tell you, well, I wasn't at fault. Doesn't matter right now. With the status of the cases as they are, the status of the laws, you basically have to, call it into your insurance company, get a claim number, and report it. Because if you seek medical treatment, you want to use that auto insurance as your primary. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, no, and that's a school of thought, call your insurance. I specifically let that off because I disagree.
You disagree?
I think you should.
You got to call your insurance company.
I think you shouldn't. I think you should wait until you speak with an attorney before you talk to your insurance company, because I think everything that you say to them can and will be held against you.
Well, what about if you get into an accident on a Saturday and you can't reach your attorney?
I've told you what you need to do. You don't need to call your insurance company.
So you're telling me that you don't have to report a claim right away?
You don't have to report a claim right away. You should. It's always good practice too. But so maybe the caveat is
no caveat.
Maybe don't agree to give a recorded statement.
There you go. Yeah. Well, the reason I'm saying to report the claim is because there's the insurance contract or the policy itself. Sometimes will say, if you don't report this claim to us right away, we're not going to cover.
Well, I think right away is variable. Like, some people can't report things right away because they're too injured. Some people can't report things right away because of the circumstances there. So, like, if you're following up within a week after an accident, as long as there's a police report created, you're not going to have any issues with trying to pursue a claim with your insurance company.
I don't disagree with that. What about getting insurance information from the at-fault driver?
The police should do that for you, but you should definitely always get the information and take a picture of their tag, because an attorney can find out who owns that vehicle if you get a picture of their tag.
Yeah, because the police are going to put limited information on. Usually they'll put the policy number of the insurance. Normally. One thing I want to point out though, and I don't think most people know this, because I just from experience, whatever you report during the accident that's either recorded on the accident report or whatever you said to the Florida Highway Patrol is protected, right? There's a privilege. So what that means is it doesn't come up against you in court. So if you have someone that said, hey, I'm at fault, it's not going to be used against them because it's an accident report privilege. And that privilege extends to everybody involved in the accident. The reason it's out there, the theory behind it and the policy reason for having it is that you don't want to use people's words against them. You want to encourage them to tell the truth at the scene of the accident. However, unfortunately, that works against, some claimants where you have somebody that is at the scene saying, I was at fault, I was looking at my phone, I was doing this or that, and then later they change their story to the insurance company. I wasn't at fault, I wasn't doing this or that. So that is a problem, and a good attorney can work around that and investigate the case immediately, have someone interview witnesses, things like that. They can do things ahead of time. So it's always good to contact your attorney as well.
Yeah. So I think so. Hopefully that helps. If you have questions about other things that you should do after you're involved in an accident, or if something specifically happened to you that you have a question about, don't hesitate to leave the comments and share, and we'll see you next time.
Be safe.